The bell above the bakery door rings at exactly 7 in the morning. Adira doesn't need to look up to know who just walked in. She knows his footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. The kind of steps that part crowds without trying. The kind that once made her heart race in a glass office 40 floors above the city, before everything fell apart. Her hands keep moving, steady, practiced. She presses the dough with her palms, folds it inward, turns it, folds again. The warm smell of cinnamon and brown sugar fills the air. The twins are still asleep upstairs. The morning is still hers, or it was until 30 seconds ago. "Morning," he says. Same word, same voice, same seat at the corner counter. "Morning," she says back. Same answer, same careful smile. He has no idea. 5 years, 342 mornings, and Dominic Ashford-Brice has never once looked at the blind woman behind the counter and thought, "Wait, I know her." Adira exhales slowly through her nose. She sets down the dough and reaches for the espresso machine. Her fingers find every button without searching. She has memorized this machine the way she has memorized everything she cannot see. By feel, by sound, by the quiet language of routine. She pulls his shot. Double, no sugar, 1 splash of oat milk. She has never asked him how he likes it. She already knew. The cup meets the counter with a soft click. "Thank you," he says, not looking up from his phone. She nods and turns away before her face says something her mouth knows better than to say. Hi viewers, have you ever had to serve someone who shattered your whole world and smile while doing it? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know. Because that is what Adira Celestine-Bowen does every single morning. She smiles. She serves the coffee. She goes back to her dough, and she does not cry until the bathroom door is locked behind her and the exhaust fan is loud enough to cover the sound. What no one in this small, quiet town of Greer's Hollow knows, not the regulars who come in for her sourdough, not her neighbour, Ms. Eula Ray, who watches the kids some afternoons, not a single soul who has ever sipped coffee in this bakery, is that the man who sits in the corner every morning is the father of Adira's children. Both of them, Zion and Sable, 4 years old, her whole life, her reason, and his. He just doesn't know it yet. Adira was 22 when she started working for Ashford-Brice Global. Entry level, filing, scheduling, managing the overflow that senior assistants didn't have time for. She was already visually impaired then, navigating the office with a white cane and a sharpness that made people uncomfortable in the best way. She caught errors that sighted colleagues missed. She remembered everything. She was quiet in the way that still rooms are quiet. Full, not empty. Dominic Ashford-Brice noticed her 3 weeks in. Not in the way men notice women they want. In the way a man notices something that doesn't fit his expectations and can't stop thinking about why. He asked her to join his personal assistant team by month 2. She said yes, because the pay was better, because the rent was due, because she was 22 and surviving, not living, and the difference between those two things is a number at the bottom of a paycheck. She told herself it was professional. She told herself that for 8 months. Then came the night of the Harmon conference, a celebration dinner that ran too late, a driver that didn't show, and a rainstorm that turned the city into a grey blur. He offered his car. She refused. He walked her to the lobby anyway. They stood there, watching the rain fall in silver sheets, not talking about anything important, and then talking about everything that was. She doesn't let herself revisit that night. Not now. Not while his coffee is still hot and his presence is still filling up every inch of her carefully constructed piece. She hears him shift on the stool, hears the soft sound of his cup meeting the saucer as he sets it down, hears him breathe, slow, unhurried, the breath of a man whose world is exactly where he left it. She envies that. She envies it so much it lives behind her sternum like a splinter she has stopped trying to remove. The door to the back staircase opens. Adira's spine goes rigid, small feet on wooden steps, the particular shuffle of a child who is half asleep and moving anyway because something pulled them forward. Hunger, habit, the pull of a new morning. "Mama." Zion. His voice is rough with sleep, lower than a 4-year-old's voice has any right to be. He appears in the doorway between the back kitchen and the front counter, rubbing one eye with his fist, his other hand dragging his worn grey rabbit by one ear. Adira moves fast. She steps toward him, kneels, wraps one arm around his small shoulders and gently steers him backward before he can get further into the room. "Baby," she whispers, her voice low and controlled. "Go back upstairs. Wake your sister. Mama will bring breakfast." "I want to sit out here," he says, already leaning against her, already scanning the room with those eyes of his, silver grey and wide. Serious in the way that children are serious when they have been watching adults figure out the world and have quietly decided they understand more than anyone gives them credit for. "Not today, baby. Go on." He goes, slow, reluctant. She listens to his feet on the stairs until she can't hear them anymore. Then she stands, turns back to the counter, and finds Dominic Ashford-Brice looking directly at her. Not at his phone, not at the window, at her. His brow is pulled together in that way she used to watch from across conference tables. Not confusion, but the earliest shape of recognition. The moment before a man realizes he has seen something he cannot yet name. Her heart does not race, it stops. "Your son?" he asks. His voice is even, conversational. The kind of voice that has been trained not to show what it is actually thinking. "Yes," she says. One word. She will not give him more than one word. He nods slowly, looks down at his cup, picks it up, takes one long sip. She watches the line of his jaw, the way his thumb moves against the ceramic, the exact angle of his shoulders, broad, still, the posture of a man who has just filed something away in his mind to examine later. He puts the cup down. "Good coffee," he says, "as always." He pulls out his card, leaves it on the counter beside the exact amount, with no change needed, because in 5 years he has never once made her wait for payment or reach for a register. That detail, small and consistent, is the one she hates the most. It would be easier if he were cruel. It would be easier if she could look at him and feel nothing but the cold, clean edge of anger. Instead, she feels the thing she has spent 5 years learning to fold very small and store very deep. The bell above the door rings on his way out. Adira stands at the counter, her hands flat on the cool marble, her breath carefully measured. Upstairs, she hears Sable's laugh, bright and sudden, the way her daughter laughs at things only she finds funny. And then Zion's voice, lower, saying something she can't make out. She closes her eyes. He looked. Dominic Ashford-Brice, the man who built a global empire on reading rooms and reading people, the man whose mind works like a machine that never stops processing. He looked at her son and something moved behind his eyes. He will come back tomorrow morning. He always comes back. But this time, something has shifted. She felt it in the half-second pause before he spoke, in the extra beat before he looked away, in the way he said, "Your son," like he was asking a question the words weren't built to carry. Adira opens her eyes. She picks up his empty cup. She carries it to the sink and turns on the water and stands there, letting it run over her hands, cold at first, then warm, then hot. Zion cannot go back to sitting at the counter. She has kept them apart for 4 years, 342 mornings. She has managed the distance between this life and that one with the precision of someone who understands that one crack is all it takes. One wrong moment, one curious child who moves too fast, one pair of silver eyes catching the light at exactly the wrong angle. She thought she had more time. She was wrong, because tomorrow morning Dominic Ashford-Brice will walk through that door again, and this time he will not be looking at his phone. He comes back the next morning, and the morning after that. But something is different now, and Adira feels it before he even reaches the counter. She feels it in the way the air in the room changes when he enters. Heavier, slower, charged with a question he hasn't spoken out loud yet, but is carrying the way people carry things they aren't ready to put down. She keeps the twins upstairs. She makes their breakfast early, sets it on the small table near the window, and tells Zion in her firmest voice that this morning is a school morning, and there is no coming downstairs until she calls them. Sable accepts this without argument. Sable accepts most things. She is 4 years old and already has the composure of someone who has decided that the world is interesting but not worth panicking over. Zion looks at Adira with those grey eyes and doesn't argue either. But he knows. She can always tell when he knows something she hasn't said. It lives in the stillness of his face, in the careful way he doesn't ask the question that is sitting right behind his teeth. She goes downstairs. The bell rings at 7. Dominic orders the same coffee. Double shot, oat milk, no sugar. He sits in the same corner, but today he doesn't look at his phone. He sets it face down on the counter and wraps both hands around the cup and looks out the window. And Adira, working at the far end of the counter, keeps her movements unhurried and her face composed. He stays 20 minutes longer than usual. He doesn't say anything beyond good morning and thank you, but he stays. And in staying, he fills up the room in a way that makes the walls feel closer and the air feel thinner, and every small sound, the hiss of steam, the soft knock of a cup, the distant creak of the floor above, feel louder. When he leaves, Adira realizes she has been holding tension in the back of her jaw for the full length of his visit. She rolls her neck, presses 2 fingers to the space below her ear, breathes. This is what he has always done, even back in the glass office, with the city spread out 40 floors below. Even in meetings, she navigated by the sound of voices and the warmth of laptop screens and the architectural memory of a room she had walked 100 times. His presence was always the kind that rearranged the air around it. She had told herself, back then, that it was just power, that some people are simply built that way, that it meant nothing. She told herself a lot of things at 22. The third morning, he speaks. Not a lot, not directly. He asks her how long she has run the bakery. His voice is measured, careful, the voice of a man feeling for the edge of something in the dark. 5 years, she says. He nods, looks down at his cup. Before that, he asks. The question sits between them like a lit match. She keeps her hands moving. She is folding a bag closed at the far counter, her fingers working by feel. She does not slow down. She does not hesitate. Different work, she says. A long time ago. She hears the small sound of him accepting that answer, the soft shift of his jacket, the tap of his ring against the ceramic. You grew up around here? He asks. No, she says. Another nod. The questions stop, but he stays the extra 20 minutes again. By the 4th morning, Adira has stopped pretending this is routine. She knows what this is. She has watched this man work long enough to know that Dominic Ashford-Brice does not repeat behaviours without purpose. He does not linger. He does not make small talk that is actually small. Every word he says is load-bearing. Every question is the visible part of something much larger being constructed underneath. He is piecing something together. She doesn't know how much he has already built. On the 5th morning, a Thursday, she makes the mistake of letting Sable come down first. It is a small error born of a long night. Zion had a fever that broke at 3 in the morning, and Adira had barely slept, And when she heard Sable up and moving at 6:30, she was elbow-deep in dough and simply said, "Come on down, baby," and didn't think about the clock, didn't think about the corner stool, didn't think about anything except that her daughter's feet sounded bright and fast on the stairs, and sometimes that sound alone is enough to keep a person standing. Sable appears in the doorway in her orange pajamas, hair loose, rabbit clutched in one arm, and she stops. She looks at the man in the corner. Dominic looks up from his cup. 4 years old, dark brown skin, round cheeks, her mother's mouth and her father's eyes, those unmistakable silver-grey eyes that catch light differently than any other colour in the room. She tilts her head at him. He tilts his head back. Adira hears the silence stretch and moves before it snaps. She is around the counter in 4 steps, her hand gentle but firm on Sable's small shoulder, steering her back toward the kitchen with soft words about breakfast and orange juice and the cartoon that's probably already started upstairs. Sable goes, still looking back over her shoulder as she moves, the way children do when they've found something interesting and aren't done with it yet. Adira turns back to the counter. Dominic is not looking at his phone. He is looking at the empty doorway where Sable just was. His jaw is tight. His hands are very still around his cup. His eyes have the quality of a man running calculations he hasn't told anyone he's running. He looks at Adira. She looks back. Or she faces him, points her face in his direction with the particular stillness of someone who has learned to meet a room without needing to see it. The silence between them is not comfortable. "Beautiful kids," he says finally. His voice is even, neutral. But there is something behind it, something careful and controlled and working very hard to stay that way. "Thank you," Adira says. He leaves 2 minutes later, doesn't finish his coffee. That night, after the twins are asleep, Adira sits at the small kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a cup of tea that has gone cold. The bakery is dark below her. The town outside is quiet. She has been here before, this exact moment. Not this kitchen, not this town, but this feeling. The feeling of something approaching that she cannot outrun, cannot redirect, cannot fold small enough to store away. The feeling of a door she locked years ago, beginning, slowly, from the other side, to open. She could close the bakery, pack 2 bags, 2 small children, 1 cane, and disappear again. She has done it before. She knows how. But Zion started school here. He has a teacher who knows how to talk to him, and a best friend named Kofi, who comes over on Fridays. And Sable has dance class on Tuesdays, and she talks about it from Monday to Sunday like it is the most important thing happening on Earth. Adira is so tired of running. She picks up the cold tea and takes a sip and sets it back down. Tomorrow morning, the bell will ring at 7, and the morning after that. And at some point, she doesn't know when, she doesn't know how, Dominic Ashford-Brice is going to stop asking careful questions and start getting careful answers. And when that moment comes, Adira has no plan. Only 2 sleeping children upstairs, and the truth that has been waiting, patient and heavy, for 5 years. It is a Saturday. Adira does not open the bakery on Saturdays until 9. The morning is slower. The light comes in at a different angle. The twins are allowed downstairs. She forgets, for exactly 4 minutes, that Dominic Ashford-Brice has no schedule she controls. He comes in at 8:47. She hears the bell, and her whole body responds before her mind does. A sharp pull through her chest, a tightening across her shoulders, the particular animal awareness of a person who has been bracing for something and still isn't ready when it arrives. Zion is sitting at the corner counter. Not Dominic's corner. The other end. Zion sits there sometimes in the mornings, legs dangling off the stool, eating his toast with both hands and watching the window the way he watches everything, with the quiet concentration of someone collecting information. Sable is in the back kitchen, allegedly helping, actually talking to the radio. Dominic sees Zion before Adira can move. She hears it happen, the particular pause in his footsteps, the one extra beat of stillness that means his body has registered something before his thoughts have caught up. She moves toward the front, but she is 2 seconds too slow, because Zion, who has never been afraid of anything in his 4 years of life, turns on his stool and looks at the man who just walked in with those silver eyes completely open. Curious, easy, the gaze of a child who does not yet understand that some strangers carry more weight than they appear to. "Hi," Zion says. Dominic stops. There is no other word for it. He stops. Not the polite pause of a man acknowledging a greeting. A full, complete stop. Both feet planted. The hand that was reaching for the back of the nearest stool now hanging at his side, still. His eyes are on Zion's face, and Zion's face looks back at him. Silver to silver. The exact same shape, the exact same color. That rare grey that sits between steel and winter sky. Even the brow line. Even the angle of the jaw beneath the baby softness of 4 years old. Adira reaches the front counter. "Zion," she says. Her voice is light. She makes it light on purpose, the way you keep your hand relaxed when you are reaching towards something that startles easily. "Go see if your sister found the butter." Zion doesn't move immediately. He is still looking at Dominic. "Your eyes are grey," Zion says. Not a question, a simple, honest observation, delivered the way children deliver the most devastating truths, without ceremony, without hesitation, without any understanding of what they are handing to the person in front of them. Dominic doesn't answer. His lips part and then close. His chest rises with a slow breath. "Zion?" Adira's voice is still soft, but the word lands with more weight this time. "Go on, baby. Now." And Zion goes. He slides off the stool without argument, still glancing back once as he disappears through the kitchen door. The silence that follows is enormous. Adira stands behind the counter, both hands flat on the surface. She keeps her face forward, keeps her expression clean, keeps every line of her body arranged into the shape of a woman who is not shaking on the inside. Dominic walks to the counter. He does not sit. He stands on the other side, close enough that she can feel the shift in the air, can hear the slight change in his breathing. The breathing of a man who is holding something very still inside his chest. "How old are they?" he asks. His voice is different, lower, stripped of the careful conversational neutrality he has been wearing for weeks. This voice is direct in the way that a man is direct when the performance has suddenly become too expensive. Adira picks up a cloth, wipes the counter, keep her hands moving because her hands are the only honest part of her face right now. "4," she says. He is quiet. She counts her own heartbeats because she has nothing else to count. "Both of them," he says, not a question. "Yes." He breathes. The cloth in her hands has stopped moving. She realizes this and starts again. Small circles, back and forth. "When did you move here?" he asks. And there it is. She hears the direction of it, the angle. He is not asking about the town. He is asking about the timeline. He is placing pieces in order, laying them flat against each other, checking where the edges meet. "About 5 years ago," she says. She hears the sound he makes, not a word, a breath that carries weight, the sound of a number landing somewhere it was already expected. She waits. He doesn't ask the next question. She understands why. Because the next question is the kind that changes everything in a room, and Dominic Ashford-Brice has spent 34 years learning that some doors, once opened, do not close. He picks up his coffee when she sets it down. He pays. He walks to his corner, but today he does not touch his phone. He sits with his coffee in both hands and stares at the space where Zion was sitting. His face is very still. His eyes are doing the quiet, relentless work of a man whose mind is not still at all. Adira moves to the back kitchen. She stands at the sink, turns on the tap, feels the water run over her hands, cold, then warm, then hot. Sable is chattering to the radio behind her, something about a song she likes, something about purple. Zion is at the table, eating his second piece of toast, watching Adira with those eyes. "Mama," he says, "that man has my eyes." The water is very hot now. Adira turns off the tap. She dries her hands on the towel by the sink. She folds the towel precisely. She hangs it back on the hook. She turns around. She kneels in front of her son. She cups his face in both hands, thumbs gentle on his cheekbones. And she looks at him. Or she does what she does instead of looking, which is to be so completely present with him that the not seeing becomes irrelevant. "You're going to be okay," she says. She is not sure in this moment whether she is talking to him. She stands, straightens her apron, walks back toward the front. Dominic's stool is empty. His coffee is half finished. His card is on the counter. He is gone. But the seat where he sat holds the shape of something unfinished, something set down carefully, temporarily, by a man who intends to come back and pick it back up. Adira knows because she knows him. She has always known him. She knows that the silence he left behind is not the silence of retreat. It is the silence before. He does not come the next morning, or the morning after. By Wednesday, Adira is sleeping in 4-hour stretches, waking at 3, lying in the dark with her hands folded on her chest, listening to the ordinary sounds of the building, the pipes, the wind at the corner window, the small shifting sounds of 2 children sleeping in the next room, and telling herself that the absence means nothing, that powerful men have schedules, that sometimes the coffee shop routine breaks without reason. She tells herself these things. She does not believe them. On Wednesday afternoon, Ms. Eula Ray from next door comes to sit with the twins while Adira restocks the back pantry, and Sable immediately begins explaining to Ms. Eula Ray that grey is a better colour than yellow, and Zion says nothing and sits near the window and watches the street below. Adira is behind a tower of flour sacks when she hears Ms. Eula Ray say, "Baby, what you looking for out there?" And Zion says, "The man." Adira goes very still. "What man, baby?" "The one from the bakery," Zion says, "with the same eyes as me." There is a pause. Then Ms. Eula Ray makes the small, soft sound she makes when something has moved her. And you looking for him?" "I just want to ask him something," Zion says. Adira sets her hand flat on the flour sack in front of her. The paper is cool and rough. She focuses on that. "What do you want to ask him?" Miss Eula Ray says. Zion is quiet for a moment. Then, "If he knows why we match." Adira walks out of the pantry. She tells Miss Eula Ray that everything's fine. She makes afternoon snacks. She sits at the table with her children and pours juice into 2 cups and keeps her voice even while Sable talks about a frog she saw that morning, and Zion sits across from her and says nothing more, and eats his crackers with the careful focus of a child who has decided to wait. That evening, after they are in bed, Adira sits at the kitchen table and does something she has not done in 5 years. She thinks about what comes next, not the version where she keeps the distance, not the version she has been managing and maintaining and patching every morning for 340-some days. The real next. The version she has been avoiding the way you avoid a room in your own house that has a smell you can't identify and a door that doesn't quite close all the way. She has 2 children who are growing, who are watching, who are, in the quiet and specific way of children who pay attention, beginning to build their own picture of the world, and noticing where the pieces don't fit. Zion knows something is shaped wrong in the story of his life. He is 4 years old and he is already standing at the window, watching for the man whose eyes match his. Adira presses 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. She thinks about the night of the Harmon conference. She allows herself to think about it, which she almost never does, because remembering is a door she can't fully control once she opens it. The rain, the lobby, the conversation that started about nothing and became, without either of them planning it, a real one. His voice, stripped of the boardroom distance, speaking carefully about loss in the way that people speak about things they carry alone. Her answering honestly because she was tired that night, truly tired in the way that lowers all the careful fences. They were 2 people in a lobby, watching rain for too long. One night, that was all it was. She was gone before sunrise because she understood, with absolute clarity, that morning would rebuild all the walls that the rain had softened, that he would return to being who he was, and she would return to being his assistant, and the night would compress into something small and strange and never spoken of. She did not know yet that she was already carrying more than she left with. She found out 6 weeks later. She quit by email. She sent it at 2 in the morning because that was the only time she trusted herself to send it without changing her mind. She gave no reason. She left no forwarding number. She used the first paycheck of what she had saved to put a deposit on a small apartment 400 miles away. And she sat on the floor of that empty apartment with a pregnancy test in one hand, and she made the decision she has spent 5 years living inside. She would keep them. She would keep them, and she would build something solid, and she would not go back. She has never questioned that choice. Until now. Now she is sitting in her kitchen on the 4th night of Dominic's absence, and her son is watching windows, and her daughter has her father's jawline, and her carefully built something solid is showing the first fine cracks of a structure that was always carrying more weight than it appeared. On Thursday morning, she opens the bakery at 6. She is behind the counter at 6:52 when the bell rings. He is early. She knows it is him before he speaks. The weight of the step. The particular way the air pressure changes. She sets down the portafilter. She straightens. She waits. He doesn't sit down. He stands at the counter. Close. Closer than his usual careful distance. She can hear him breathing. Steady, measured. The breath of a man who has done something hard to get to this point and is not going to let himself back away now. Adira, he says. Her name. He has never said her name. Not once in 5 years of corner stools and morning coffee and careful small talk. She has been the woman behind the counter, the voice that says good morning, the hands that remember exactly how he takes his coffee. He has never said her name. She understands what it means that he is saying it now. He knows. Not everything, but enough. He has been gone 3 days, and he spent those 3 days doing what Dominic Ashford-Brice does when something doesn't add up. He pulled the thread. He looked at the numbers. He traced the timeline back to its beginning, and he stood at the place where it started, and he looked at what was there. She waits. I need you to tell me the truth, he says. Quiet, controlled. The voice of a man keeping something enormous, very still, inside a very small container. The bakery is empty except for them. Outside, a car passes. A bird. The ordinary sound of a Thursday morning in a small town that does not know what is happening inside this building. Adira folds her hands on the counter. She opens her mouth, and at that exact moment, the door from the back staircase opens and Zion appears. He is dressed for school, orange backpack already on, lunchbox in hand. He stops in the doorway, looks at Dominic, looks at his mother, and then, with the absolute unbothered calm of a 4-year-old who has already made peace with something the adults in the room are still fighting, he walks past them both to the stool at the end of the counter and climbs up and sets his lunchbox carefully on the surface. He looks at Dominic. Dominic looks at him. And Zion says, in the same simple, direct voice he used before, "You came back." The silence that follows is the loudest thing Adira has ever not heard. She stands between them, her past and her present, the secret and the truth, the life she built and the life she ran from. And for the first time in 5 years, she has absolutely nothing left to manage. Dominic's eyes move from Zion to her. She faces him. She does not reach for the cloth, does not reach for the coffee, does not reach for any of the ordinary, practiced things she uses to fill the space where the truth lives. "Adira," he says again, and this time the voice is not controlled. This time it breaks slightly, right at the edge, just enough. "Are they mine?" The question is in the air. It doesn't echo, it doesn't need to. It lands in the room like something dropped from a great height. No bounce, no roll. Just the flat, permanent impact of a thing that has finally reached the ground it was always going to reach. Adira's hands are very still on the counter. Zion is on his stool at the end of the counter, lunchbox in front of him, watching both of them with those grey eyes. He is not afraid. He is 4 years old, and he is not afraid. And somehow, that is the thing that undoes her first. She had prepared for this moment in the abstract way that you prepare for things you believe might happen, but hope won't. The way you know where the fire exit is, but never actually imagine using it. She had rehearsed sentences in the dark, at 3 in the morning, and discarded all of them, because none of them were the right shape for the actual weight of what needed to be said. She has no sentence now. She has only her hands on the counter and her son on a stool, and Dominic Ashford-Brice standing 4 feet away from her, waiting, with the expression of a man who already knows the answer and needs to hear it anyway. "Zion," she says. Her voice is very calm, that particular calm that is not peace. That is the surface of water over a very deep place. "Go upstairs and get your sister. Tell her to bring her backpack. But, now, baby, please." He looks at her, then at Dominic, then back at her. He gets down from the stool. He picks up his lunchbox. He walks to the back door with the unhurried dignity of a small person who has decided to respect a request he doesn't fully agree with. When the door closes, Adira breathes. Dominic does not move. He is still standing on the other side of the counter with his hands at his sides and his jaw set and his eyes doing the thing they do when he is processing at full speed and has decided not to reveal the output yet. She knows that look. She knows it from 40 floors up, from glass conference rooms, from late nights in a lit office when everyone else had gone home. She knows every register of this man's face, in the way you know the face of someone you once loved, carefully and quietly and completely alone. She lifts her chin. "Yes," she says. One word. It lands. She watches him receive it, watches the thing that moves through him. Not surprise, because he already knew, but confirmation is different from knowing. Confirmation is the door actually opening. Confirmation is the weight of a thing becoming real in the body, rather than just the mind. His jaw tightens. His hands at his sides close into fists and then open again. He breathes through his nose. Once, slow. 5 years, he says. It is not a question. It is not an accusation. It is a man reading the number aloud to make it real. 5 years. He says it the way you say a distance you have just been told you walked without knowing. Not in anger, not yet, but in the staggered arithmetic of a man recalculating everything. "Yes," she says again. "You knew." His voice is flat. "When you left?" She does not flinch. "No," she says. "I found out after." He processes this. She can hear him processing it the way you can hear the shift in a room when the pressure changes. "You found out," he says slowly, "and you chose not to tell me." "Yes." The word is clean. She will not dress it up. She will not reach for justifications right now, because justifications are what people use when they are not ready to stand in the full weight of a decision. And Adira made her decision with both hands, and she has lived it with both hands, and she will not pretend it was something lighter than what it was. He looks at her. She faces him. The bakery is very quiet. Outside, the town is beginning its ordinary morning. A car door, a dog, the distant sound of the school bus 3 streets over, the one her children are supposed to be on in 11 minutes. Why? He asks. And here is where it gets complicated. Here is where the single-word answers stop working. Here is the question she has turned over in the dark 100 times, that she has answered and re-answered and argued with herself about in the small hours of every morning when the twins were newborns and crying and she was alone with 2 babies, and the absolute certainty that she had made the right call, and the constant terror that she was wrong. She breathes. "I was your assistant," she says. "I was a 22-year-old blind omega who worked for you. And after one night, I was supposed to walk back into that office and sit outside your door and schedule your meetings and act like nothing happened." She pauses. "And I couldn't. And I knew I couldn't. And I knew what it would look like. And I knew what it would cost me. And I had nothing, Dominic. I had nothing, and I was already carrying everything." She stops. He is very still. "So I left," she says, "and I built this, and I have 2 children who are fed and safe and loved, and they have never gone without a single thing they needed. I built this, alone, and I will not apologize for surviving." The silence after this is different from the silence before it. She hears him exhale, long, careful, the breath of a man releasing something he hadn't realized he was holding. When he speaks again, his voice has changed. The flatness is gone. Underneath it is something raw, not performed, not managed, just the unguarded sound of a man in pain that he did not know he was allowed to feel. "I would have been there," he says. She opens her mouth. He keeps going. "I know you didn't know that. I know you had no reason to believe that. I know exactly who I was in that office, and I know what you saw." He pauses. "I am not saying you were wrong to doubt me. I am saying I would have been there." Something moves in her chest. She does not let it move far. She has too much practice keeping it still. "You didn't know I existed," she says quietly. "Not really. Not outside of the work." He is quiet. "That's true," he says. She did not expect him to say that. She expected defense. She expected the architecture of a man who has spent his whole life being right. She expected him to build a case for himself. Instead, he says, "That's true," and just stands there in the wreckage of it. The door from the back opens again. Sable comes through first, back on, hair half done, a piece of toast in one hand. She stops when she sees Dominic. She stares at him with the frank assessment of a child who has decided she is not impressed by anything until proven otherwise. Zion is behind her. The 3 of them stand in the same room for the first time, or the first time with the lights on and the truth on the table and no counter to hide behind. Dominic looks at them, both of them, one face then the other, his children. The word lands somewhere behind his eyes, and Adira watches it land and watches what it does to him. The subtle crumbling at the edges, the way the control he has worn his whole life suddenly looks very thin. He crouches down, slowly, not reaching for them, just getting to their level, meeting them where they are. Zion watches him. Sable takes another bite of toast. "Hi," Dominic says. His voice is different again, not the boardroom voice, not the careful conversational voice, something smaller, something that has never been used in a glass office or a conference room or anywhere that required performance. "Hi," Zion says. Sable chews her toast and then says without ceremony, "You have the same eyes as my brother." Dominic makes a sound, not quite a laugh, not quite anything with a name, just a sound that comes from a place that has been closed for a long time. "I know," he says. "I noticed that." "It's because you match," Sable says, as if this is obvious and everyone should have figured it out by now. Dominic looks up at Adira. She does not look away. Or she does what she does instead. She faces him fully, and in the facing there is no more distance to manage. No counter, no cloth, no careful arrangement of expression. Just the truth of 5 years standing between two people who are no longer pretending it isn't there. "I'm not going anywhere," he says. 3 words. He says them quietly, without drama, the way you say a thing when you mean it so completely that volume would only diminish it. Adira says nothing. She doesn't say good. She doesn't say, "We'll see." She doesn't say the dozens of things she rehearsed in the dark, or the one real thing she would never let herself say out loud. She says nothing. She turns to the twins and tells them to get their shoes because the bus comes in 6 minutes, and if Sable doesn't have both shoes on before they hit the door, they are running. Sable drops her toast and sprints. Zion moves to follow her, but he stops once at the kitchen door and looks back at Dominic. Dominic is still crouched down, still at their level, looking at the boy who has his eyes and his jaw and his particular stillness. Zion studies him for a long moment. Then he nods. One small, serious nod. The nod of someone who has been waiting for something and is acknowledging, without celebration, that it has arrived. He disappears through the door. Adira and Dominic are alone again. The bakery is quiet. He stands. He is taller than the room seems built for, standing at his full height in this small, warm space that smells like bread and cinnamon and the ordinary life she has built with her hands. "We need to talk," he says. "Properly. Not here. Not like this." She nods. She does not trust her voice. He reaches into his jacket, pulls out a card, but not the one he leaves for coffee. A different one. A personal one. She can tell by the weight of it as it lands on the counter, by the sound. Not a corporate card. Something else. "When you're ready," he says. He walks to the door. The bell rings. He is gone. Adira stands in the middle of her bakery, in the middle of the life she built, and holds the card she cannot read in both hands. The bus is in 4 minutes. Upstairs, Sable is yelling about her left shoe. The morning keeps moving. It does not wait for the ground to stop shifting. She puts the card in her apron pocket. She puts both hands on the counter. She breathes. She does not know what she will do when he calls. She does not know if she will answer. She does not know how a person dismantles a 5-year wall without losing everything she built it to protect. What she knows is this. He said, "I'm not going anywhere." And the part of her she has been keeping very small and very still in a very deep place heard that, and did not stay still. That is the part that terrifies her most. The card sits on the kitchen table for 3 days. Adira walks past it every morning. She sets breakfast plates around it. She wipes the table and lifts it, and wipes under it and puts it back. She does not touch it the way you touch something you intend to use. She touches it the way you touch something you are not yet sure you have the right to. On the 4th day, Zion picks it up. He turns it over in his small hands, running his thumb across the raised lettering he cannot read yet. And then he looks up at his mother with those silver eyes and says, "Is this from the man?" "Put it down, baby." He puts it down, but he doesn't stop looking at it. That evening, Adira calls her older cousin Tamsin Ray, who is the only person in the world who knows the whole truth. Not the partial version, not the edited one, the complete thing, start to finish. Tamsin Ray lives in Atlanta and has strong opinions about everything and delivers them the way you deliver a diagnosis. Direct, without apology, because softening it would only delay the treatment. "He came back," Adira says. Silence. Then, "To the bakery?" "Yes." "And the kids?" "They saw him." Tamsin Ray is quiet for a moment, then she exhales. And? He asked if they were his. And you told him? Yes. Another silence, longer this time, the kind of silence that is not empty but full. Full of Tamsin Ray processing and deciding and selecting from the many things she could say, the one thing that will actually be useful. Adira, she says finally, what are you scared of? The question is simple. It is too simple. It goes right past all the defenses and lands in the center of the thing. Adira looks at the card on the table. Everything, she says. She hears Tamsin Ray breathe. Then start with one thing, just one, and move from there. She hangs up at 9:15. The twins are already asleep. The bakery is dark below her, and the town outside is doing its quiet nighttime things, and the card is still on the table. She picks it up. She calls the number before she can change her mind. He answers on the second ring. Adira. Her name again, said the same way, like it is something he was waiting to say. You said we needed to talk, she says. Yes. Then talk. A pause. The sound of him shifting. A chair, maybe. She pictures him in some large, clean room at the top of something. The city below. The kind of space that has too much glass and not enough warmth. Not on the phone, he says. I'd like to see the kids, if you'll allow it. Every part of her tightens. She knew this was coming. She has known since the morning he crouched to their level, with that voice that had never been used in a boardroom. She knew, and she is still not ready. And she is beginning to understand that ready is not a place she is going to reach before this happens. Saturday, she says. The park on Cedarwell. 10 in the morning. 1 hour. Silence. Okay, he says. Quiet. No negotiation. No counter. Just, okay. She hangs up. Her hands are not shaking. She checks. They are very still. She is the kind of person whose body goes completely still when she is most afraid, which means she has no reliable way of knowing how afraid she actually is until the next morning, when she wakes up exhausted from a night of sleep that was technically sleep and nothing else. Saturday comes the way Saturdays always come. Sable awake before 7, Zion awake at 6:54, the particular noise of two small people who have no interest in the weight of what the morning is carrying. She dresses them. She does their hair. She tells them they are going to the park and that someone is meeting them there, and she says it with the same tone she uses for everything. Level, warm, no drama. And Sable immediately asks if there will be ducks, and Zion says nothing and looks out the window. They arrive at Cedarwell Park at 9:58. Dominic is already there. He is standing near the fountain, not on his phone, not moving, just standing in the particular way of someone who arrived early, because arriving early was the only thing left he could control. He is wearing dark jeans and a grey jacket. No tie, no corporate armor. He looks, for the first time in all the years she has not watched him across counters and conference tables, like an ordinary man. He is not an ordinary man, but he is trying. She can feel the trying from 15 feet away. Sable sees the ducks first and takes off immediately toward the pond, which gives Adira about 11 seconds to stand there with Zion's hand in hers before Dominic closes the distance. He stops in front of them. He looks at Zion. Zion looks back. Hey, Dominic says. Hey, Zion says. Then, and this is the part that splits Adira straight through the center, Zion lets go of her hand, just releases it, walks 2 steps forward, stands in front of Dominic and tilts his head up and says, with complete seriousness, "Are you our dad?" The fountain keeps going, a bird somewhere. The ordinary world doing its ordinary thing. Dominic crouches down. He does not look at Adira for permission. He does not hedge. He does not give Zion a careful adult non-answer wrapped in kindness. He says, yes. One word, clean and complete and nothing taken back. Zion considers this. He looks at the man in front of him with the same eyes and the same jaw and the same capacity for absolute stillness. Okay, Zion says. Then he turns and runs toward his sister at the pond. Adira stands very still. Dominic stands. He turns to her, and she knows her face is giving something away because she cannot currently afford the energy it takes to keep everything arranged. She is too busy keeping herself upright. Thank you, he says, for this. She nods, once. They walk to a bench near the pond, and they sit, and they watch Sable try to explain to a duck why it should stay still, and Zion crouch at the water's edge, examining something, and neither of them speaks for a long time, and the silence between them is different from every other silence they have ever shared. It is not managed. It is not a silence she is filling with coffee orders and cloth and counterwiping. It is just two people sitting with something real between them, not trying to make it smaller. He didn't even hesitate, Dominic says quietly, about Zion. He never does, she says. Dominic watches the boy at the water's edge. Something in his face, the tightness around his jaw, the slight pull at the corner of his eye, shifts into something unguarded. He's incredible, he says. Adira looks toward the pond. Yes, she says, he is. Sable chooses this moment to turn around, point at Dominic, and yell across the park. You! Come see this duck. He's rude. Dominic looks at Adira. She almost smiles. You should probably go see the rude duck, she says. He goes. She watches him walk across the grass toward her daughter, watches Sable immediately begin explaining the duck's behavior with full gestures, watches Dominic listen with the complete focused attention of a man who has decided this is the most important meeting he has ever been in. And something shifts in her. Not breaking, not softening exactly. More like a wall that has been load-bearing for 5 years, recognizing for the first time that maybe it does not have to hold everything alone. She sits with that. She does not trust it yet, but she lets it sit. He comes back the following Saturday, and the one after that. He does not push for more than she offers. He does not ask to come to the bakery during the week, does not call after 9, does not ask questions about the past that she has not volunteered. He shows up on Saturday mornings at Cedarwell Park at 10 o'clock with 2 hot chocolates for the twins and a plain coffee for Adira. Made correctly, double shot, oat milk, no sugar, which she notices immediately and does not comment on. And he sits and he watches and he learns. He learns that Sable is afraid of loud noises, but not of strangers. He learns that Zion won't eat anything orange, and that this is non-negotiable, and was not up for discussion at any age, and is simply a permanent feature of his personality. He learns that Sable hums when she's happy, and goes completely silent when she's processing something difficult, and that Zion is the opposite, quiet when happy, louder when working something out. He learns these things not because Adira tells him, but because he pays attention. She watches him pay attention. She watches him pay attention, the way you watch someone handle something fragile that belongs to you, with the specific alertness of a person who will move fast if needed and is hoping not to need to. He doesn't need to. On the 3rd Saturday, he brings a small paper bag from a bookstore downtown. 2 books. He checked, he says to Adira, quietly so the kids don't hear. He checked what level they were at. He checked what they liked. He got recommendations. Sable opens hers and immediately announces it is perfect and begins reading it out loud to the duck that has become apparently a fixture of their Saturday mornings. Zion opens his. It is a book about deep-sea creatures, things that live in the dark, pressurized, impossible places of the ocean, things that have evolved lights of their own because there is no other light down there. Zion reads the first page, then the second. Then he looks up at Dominic. Did you know about the anglerfish? he says. Tell me, Dominic says, and Zion does, in complete, serious, 4-year-old detail, for 11 minutes. Dominic listens to every word. Adira watches this from the bench. She is holding her coffee with both hands, and her throat is doing something she does not have a name for. A tightness that is not pain, not grief, but close enough to both that she has to look away. This is what it could have been. That thought arrives without permission. This is what 4 years of Saturday mornings could have looked like. She pushes it down. She has no room for the weight of what didn't happen. She has 2 children who are currently thriving, and a Saturday morning that is, by any measure, going better than she feared. She focuses on that. On the 4th Saturday, it rains. He shows up anyway. Early, he's standing outside the park entrance under an umbrella when she arrives with the twins in their rain jackets, and Sable immediately takes hold of the edge of his umbrella and pulls it toward herself as if she owns it. He lets her. They walk to the small, covered pavilion near the east end of the park, and Zion wants to stand at the edge and watch the rain, and Dominic stands next to him without being asked, and they watch it together. The man and the boy, the same height in the way that means one is crouching, looking at the rain like it is something to figure out. It comes down at an angle when the wind blows, Zion says. Yes, Dominic says. Why? Because the wind pushes it. What pushes the wind? Dominic pauses. Pressure, he says. The air moves from where there's too much of it to where there's not enough. Zion thinks about this. That's kind of like people, he says. Dominic looks at him. Adira, 3 feet away, goes very still. What do you mean? Dominic says. People move toward where something's missing, Zion says, simply, completely. The way children say the truest things, without knowing they are true, without trying to land them, just putting them in the air because that is where they belong. Dominic doesn't answer right away. When he does, his voice is low enough that it is almost only for himself. Yeah, he says, that's exactly like people. He looks at Adira then. She faces forward. Her jaw is tight. The rain is coming down in sheets across the park, and inside the pavilion it is warm in the way that small covered spaces are warm when the world outside is cold. She does not look at him, but she hears him. She has always heard him, even in the years she spent trying not to. Later, walking back to the car, Sable holds Dominic's hand without asking, just reaches up and takes it. He goes completely still for 1 beat. She feels it, even 3 steps ahead. She feels the moment it happens. And then his hand closes around Sable's small one, and he keeps walking. Adira hears Sable tell him something about frogs. She walks ahead. She pulls her jacket closer. There is a feeling in her chest that has been growing for 4 Saturdays now, getting a little larger each week, the way water rising in a room gets larger, slowly, then all at once. She has spent 5 years building walls. She understands, walking through the rain in Greer's Hollow with her daughter's laughter behind her, that walls you build against a person cannot always hold against a father standing in a pavilion, listening to your son explain the movement of rain. She does not say this to anyone. She barely lets herself think it. But it is there, solid, warm, terrifying. The call comes on a Tuesday morning, not from Dominic, from a number she doesn't recognize, and she almost doesn't answer, and then she does, because she has learned that the calls you almost don't answer are the ones that matter. It is a woman named Councillor Adira Ashford-Brice, Dominic's mother. She knows. That is the first thing Adira understands in the opening seconds of the call, before the woman has said anything beyond her name and her connection to Dominic. She knows, and she is called, and Adira's whole body goes cold and precise, the way it does when something requires her full, immediate attention. "I'm not calling to threaten you," the woman says. Her voice is measured, careful. The voice of someone who has also chosen her words in advance. I want to be very clear about that. What are you calling to do? Adira asks. A pause. I'm calling because my son has not stopped talking about your children for 4 weeks. I'm calling because I have never in 34 years heard him use the word incredible to describe a person who was not a business asset. And I'm calling because I am a woman who also once had to make a decision alone that affected more people than just myself, and I think you and I should talk. Adira stands in the back pantry with the phone pressed to her ear and flour on her hands, and the sound of the twins getting ready for school upstairs. I don't know you, Adira says. No, the woman says, but you know my son, better than you've let yourself believe. The call lasts 22 minutes. By the end of it, Adira has agreed to nothing specific and understood everything essential. Counsellor Priya Ashford-Brice is not an enemy. She is something more complicated. A woman who sees clearly and says so, and does not apologize for the seeing. She asks one question before she hangs up. What is it that you actually want, Adira? Not for the children, for yourself. Adira does not answer. The woman doesn't push. Think about it, she says, and hangs up. Adira stands in the pantry for a long time after. That Saturday, she gets to the park, and Dominic is already there, and she knows immediately that something is different. He is standing with his hands in his pockets and his face doing the thing it does when he has decided to say something and is organizing the order of it. The twins run ahead to the pond. She stops next to him. My mother called you, he says. It is not a question. Yes. He exhales. I didn't ask her to. I know. He looks at the pond, at Sable already crouching at the water, at Zion already explaining something to a duck. I've been thinking, he says, about what this looks like going forward. Not the Saturdays. He pauses. I mean all of it. What they know, what they're told, what we... He stops. What we... She hears the word hang. Dominic. I know, he says. I know it's not simple. It's not, she says. 5 years of not simple doesn't become simple because 4 Saturdays went well. I'm not asking for simple. He turns to face her fully. His eyes are direct and open in the particular way that costs him something. She can tell it costs him. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I'm not going to disappear. Not from them. Not from... He stops again. She waits. He breathes. I missed 4 years, Adira. I cannot get those back. I know that. But I am standing here telling you that I will not miss another day if you will let me be here. The wind moves through the park. Somewhere behind her, Sable laughs at something. Adira stands in the middle of a Tuesday feeling Saturday morning, with the weight of 5 years behind her, and this man in front of her, and the question Dominic's mother asked still sitting unanswered in the center of her chest. What do you actually want? For yourself. She has been a mother for 4 years, and a survivor for 5. And before that, a young woman who worked hard and felt everything quietly, and loved someone she was not supposed to love, and ran before it could cost her what she couldn't afford to lose. She has never once, in all of that, asked herself what she wants. She looks at him. He is waiting. He is not pressing. He is not performing patience. He is actually, genuinely, holding still for her answer, the way someone holds still when they understand that the wrong movement will end everything. I don't know how to trust this, she says. Her voice is very quiet. I know, he says. I built everything alone, and I am good at alone, and I don't know how to... I know, he says again, softer. She stops. He takes one step toward her. Not reaching, not touching, just closer. Within the range of a choice she hasn't made yet. You don't have to know how yet, he says. You just have to tell me whether you want to try. The pond. The ducks. Sable's voice carrying across the grass. Zion's serious, small face turned toward the water. Adira breathes. And then she does the thing she has been most afraid to do for 5 years. She answers honestly. Yes, she says, so quiet it almost doesn't make it out. But it does. It does. He doesn't smile. He doesn't celebrate. He exhales, long and slow, the breath of a man who has been holding something for a very long time and has just been given permission to set it down. Okay, he says. One word. The same one she gave him, once. The first time Dominic comes to the bakery, not as a customer, but as someone who belongs there, Zion opens the door before he can knock. He is standing on the other side, in his pajamas at 8 in the morning, with his rabbit under one arm, and he looks at Dominic and says, "You're early." "Am I?" Dominic says. "Mama said 9. It's 8:58. Zion considers this, then steps back and holds the door open with his whole small body, like a tiny, serious doorman who has decided this is acceptable. Adira is in the kitchen. She hears the exchange. She does not stop what she is doing. She is making French toast because it is Sunday, and Sunday is French toast, and some things do not change because a man is coming over. Even this man, even now. Simon appears in the kitchen doorway. He looks at her. She looks back, or faces him, points herself in his direction in that way that misses nothing. "Smells good," he says. "Sit down," she says, "and don't touch my knives." He sits. Sable arrives at 8:59 in her orange pajamas with her hair in 2 puffs, and she stops when she sees Dominic at the table and then immediately sits down next to him and begins telling him about a dream she had involving a horse who could do math. Dominic listens. He drinks the coffee Adira sets in front of him. He asks the right questions about the math horse. Zion takes his seat, opens his deep-sea creature book to the page about bioluminescence, and begins reading while eating French toast, and the kitchen is full of voices, and the smell of butter and cinnamon, and the ordinary, irreplaceable sound of a Sunday morning with people in it. Adira stands at the stove. Her back is to all of them. She is very careful not to let her face do the thing it is trying to do. Because if she lets it, she will have to acknowledge that the thing she is feeling right now is not fear. It is not the tightly managed, careful survival feeling she has been carrying for 5 years. It is something much older and much simpler. It is the feeling of a room being full. The weeks that follow are not perfect. She did not expect perfect. Perfect is what people who are afraid of reality promise themselves before things begin. Real life is nothing like perfect. It is Sable having a full emotional event because Dominic sat in her chair. It is Zion taking a full 3 weeks to call him anything at all, and then one Tuesday morning saying without preamble, "Dad, can anglerfish see in the dark?" And the kitchen going completely silent for 1 beat, while Dominic absorbs the word and then answers the question with complete composure because he has done his research. It is Adira and Dominic standing in the bakery after the twins are asleep and arguing, actually arguing, voices raised slightly, neither of them backing down, about whether she will accept help with the bakery renovation she has been putting off for 8 months because she cannot decide if accepting help makes her something she has spent 5 years refusing to be. He says she is allowed to let someone help her. She says she does not need his money. He says he did not offer money. He offered to paint the back room, and would she please stop making this into something it is not? She is quiet. Then, "You paint?" "Badly," he says, "but with commitment." She does not laugh. She almost does. She accepts the help. He paints the back room on a Saturday, while the twins are at Tamsin Ray's for the weekend. He is, as promised, not good at it. There is paint on his left elbow, on his jaw, on the back of his hand in a shape that Adira, running her fingertip across it without thinking, says feels like a small country. He goes very still when she touches his hand. She pulls her hand back. For a few minutes. Then he goes back to the pastries she is making at the counter and does not address what just happened, and neither does he, and the kitchen is very quiet for a few minutes. Then he goes back to painting, but the air between them has shifted again. Closer. Less space between what is real and what is being said. Later, when she is locking up and he is washing the brush at the sink, he says her name, just Adira. The way he says it when it means something more than her name. She turns. "Thank you for Saturday mornings," he says, "and for Sunday French toast, and for letting me in." She stands in the middle of her bakery, in the dark, with paint smell in the air and flour still on her apron, and this man at her sink with his rolled sleeves and the small country on the back of his hand. And she thinks about Tamsin Ray's voice saying, "Start with one thing." And she thinks about Zion watching windows, and she thinks about the card she held for 4 days, and the call she made before she could talk herself out of it. "Don't make me regret it," she says. He dries his hands. He looks at her with those eyes, the ones her children have, the ones that catch light differently than any other color in the room. "I won't," he says. She believes him. That is the most frightening thing that has happened in this entire story, and the most true. It is a Sunday morning, 6 weeks later. Adira is standing at the bakery counter. The smell of cinnamon is in the air. The twins are upstairs, audible through the ceiling. Sable's voice bright and constant, Zion's lower, measured, punctuating hers. The bell rings at 7. She does not go still. She does not brace. She reaches for the espresso machine and starts his coffee before he reaches the counter, because she has always known how he takes it, and now she no longer pretends she doesn't. Dominic sets his jacket on the stool. He sits. He puts his phone face down on the counter without being asked. She puts the cup in front of him. He wraps both hands around it. They are quiet for a moment. The good kind of quiet. The kind that is full rather than careful. Upstairs, Sable laughs. Dominic looks up at the ceiling. Something in his face, loose, open, the face of a man who has stopped working so hard to contain himself, moves with something that has no complicated name. Joy. Simple and plain. Joy. "What do you think she's laughing at?" he says. "Everything," Adira says. "Always." He smiles. She turns back to the counter. She folds the bag she's been folding. She keeps her hands moving and her face forward, and she does not fight the small, warm thing that is living in her chest now, the one that arrived quietly and decided to stay. 5 years ago, she stood in an empty apartment with a test in her hand and made a decision in the dark. She made it alone, because alone was all she had. She built everything that followed with her own hands. The bakery, the routine, the small, solid life that smelled like bread and cinnamon, and 2 children who have never gone without a thing they needed. She does not regret a single stone of it. But she has learned, slowly and with great resistance, that a wall you built to protect yourself can also become the thing that keeps every good thing out. The door upstairs opens. Feet on the stairs. Fast, those are Sable's feet. Then slower, deliberate. Zion. They come through the kitchen door together. Sable immediately goes to Dominic and climbs up on the stool next to him without ceremony, as if this is the most normal thing in the world. Because to her, now, it is. Zion stops beside Adira. He looks up at her. She puts her hand on top of his head. Light, warm, the hand of a mother who has memorized the exact shape of this small person by touch alone. He leans into her. Then he looks at Dominic. "Dad," he says, "can we go to the water after this?" Dominic looks at Adira. She keeps her face even, but the corner of her mouth moves, just slightly. "After breakfast," she says. Zion nods and goes to his stool and opens his book, and the morning arranges itself around all of them. The smell of coffee and bread, Sable talking, Zion reading, the light coming through the front window at the particular angle of a Sunday that has nowhere to be. Adira stands in the middle of it. She is not bracing. She is not managing. She is not folding anything small and storing it deep. She is just here, present, in the full, ordinary, irreplaceable weight of a morning that belongs to all of them. She does not have a word for what this is. She has spent 5 years being so precise with language, measuring every sentence, selecting every word, trimming everything down to what was necessary and safe. She does not have a word for this. She thinks she might not need one. Some things are not meant to be named. Some things are only meant to be lived. The bell above the door does not ring. Nobody leaves. And that is the whole story. Not the running, not the secret, not the 5 years of careful survival. This, a Sunday morning, a table full of people, the smell of something warm, the choice, made slowly and with great difficulty, to stay. If this story moved you, if you saw yourself anywhere in Adira's silence, in Zion's steady eyes, in the long walk back to something real, then you already know why stories like this one matter. They are not just fiction. They are mirrors. They are permission. They are someone saying out loud the thing you have been holding quietly for a very long time. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that was built to reach you exactly where you are. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell us what part of this story stayed with you. Was it Adira's courage, or the moment Zion called him Dad, or something else entirely? Your thoughts don't just add to the conversation, they inspire the next person who finds their way here. We will see you in the next one.